Hi guys, so today I'm going to quickly go through a tax question, right? And what's good about this question is it pretty much goes through every type of question that you could be asked with regard to tax. So if you know how to do this question, you're pretty much sorted for tax. Tax always comes up in every Maths Lit paper 1. So make sure that you are understanding this and that you follow through with me. So it says, Jamie earns 65,000 per month, right? Please remember with tax, we always calculate it on an annual basis. So you're going to have to convert that, right, to an annual figure. I'll show you how to do that as we go. It then says she has asked you to help her calculate her tax payable to SARS, just setting up the scenario. Use the information below to help you complete the calculation for Jamie. Jamie has provided you with the following additional information. She is 67 years old. She pays for her own medical aid as well as her husband's. She contributes 1% of her gross salary to UIF and 6% of her gross salary to pension fund, right, to her pension fund. So what's important here is they give you this information because you need to use it. Age determines which rebates you get, as you can see here. Your medical aid is also a form of rebate. And then your UIF and your pension fund can actually be a tax deduction before you even get to your taxable income. So that's why they give you all this information. They never give you information in questions unless they expect you to use it. Okay, so let's just get into the questions and see what is expected of us. It says, well, what is Jamie's annual salary? Well, if she has 65,000 a month, you just times that by 12, pretty simple. Please show your working out here, right? Often students think, oh, it's so easy, there's no need to show my working out. But if it's 2 marks, they sometimes do expect some form of answer with a bit of working out, right? So that's that question there. It then says, calculate Jamie's total annual contribution to UIF and pension. So here, you could either say 1% times her gross salary or 6% or added with her 6% of gross salary, or you could just do it all in one step like this. You could just say, well, 1 plus 6%, right, like that, because that would be 7%, times by her gross annual salary. And what's important here is these questions you have to do in order because they follow on from each other, right? And in doing this question, it helps you do the next question. So I'm just going to say 7% times 780,123, and that is how much she contributes to her UIF and pension per year, right? Please be careful there to always put in your currency sign. Students often forget that. But also what's important here is you're then going to use this number in the next one. So let's now see what the next question is. It then says, what is Jamie's taxable income? Now, if you know your tax calculation, you'll know that you can take your UIF and pension, whatever you contribute there, right, and you deduct it from her annual salary, right? So you do this. Now, you could be saying, well, why do they do that? Well, what they do is they say, well, this, and when I say they, I'm talking about SARS, the government, right? They say, well, if you are protecting yourself via UIF and pension, we'll actually allow you, we'll give you a tax rebate there, or tax deduction is probably a better word, a tax deduction there, so that because you're helping yourself, we'll actually not tax you on that, right? So she doesn't get taxed on the 780,000. She gets taxed on the 780,000 minus what she contributes to her UIF and pension, and that's quite important. Over here, just to backtrack to B, please make sure that you write the total amount. So even if you work out UIF and pension separately, I expect you to add them together because it said what was the total annual contribution. Okay, it didn't say what was it for UIF and what was it for pension. It wants it together. So be careful to read your questions carefully. So 780,123 minus my answer previously stored. And this is how much she is going to be paying tax on, right, from a salary perspective. So it's not that amount, it's that amount. Quite important, okay? Let's now go to the next question. Okay. It says, using your answer and see which tax bracket does Jamie fall into. Now, we know she's going to be paying tax on this amount, so let's go see which bracket she's in, right? So if you look at that, she will be sitting over there in this tax bracket. Now be careful. What I would generally suggest here is go and actually highlight the bracket that the person is in, because I've seen students many times say, oh, it's here, and then read the wrong line when it comes to calculating the tax. And that's so frustrating because you actually knew what was going on and you just didn't track across. So just be careful there. So here it doesn't say which tax bracket. So, I mean, it doesn't label them. So you can either say it's 584,201 to 444,800, or you can label this and say, oh, it's tax bracket 5. Because they didn't give me the labels, I'm just going to be as specific as possible. And I'm going to say the 584,201 to 744,800. I'm going to say that's the tax bracket she's in. Okay? Now we're getting to a bit more of the calculation side. And let's see what's being asked here. So it says, calculate Jamie's medical aid tax credit for the year. Now, let's backtrack to the original question. It says, well, she has her own medical aid and she pays for her husband. Now, if you've done tax before, and I hope that you have, but if you haven't, let me give you a bit of context. What happens is, because you're paying, it's similar to UIF and pension, because you're paying for your own medical aid and your own medical care, they actually give you a rebate per month. And they say, okay, because you're looking after yourself, we'll reduce your tax. Okay? But over here, she's also paying for her husband. So she also gets money off for actually paying for her husband, because they're saying, well, you're relieving the burden for yourself and for your husband. So we're going to actually give you a rebate for each of them. So this is for her and this is for her husband, right? So that's each month. So what you're going to say is you're going to say, well, that's for Jamie and that's for Jamie's husband, right? But that's only 1 month. So we have to times it by 12. And then we would get our answer. And that is how much her tax is going to be reduced by, because she is actually providing healthcare through a medical aid for her and her husband. Okay? And that is how much she would get back because she's paying that premium every month. Okay? Now you could be saying, I don't really understand why we're doing all of this. Well, let me show you now. It all sort of comes together in F, right? So F says, well, after doing all of that, how much tax does Jamie pay per month for this tax year? Well, now what we have to say is we have to say, okay, we know which tax bracket she's in. This is how much she pays tax on. So it's not her tax amount. That's just how much of her income is taxed. Okay? So it says here, in that bracket, she pays 505 plus 39% of the income above this amount. Now, that's quite important because students misunderstand this. Effectively, it's saying if I split her income, right, in this little timeline here, the first amount up to 584,200, she's paying this much tax on it. So that's what she's paying on that first bit of tax. Okay? That first bit of income. So that's the tax she pays on the first bit of income. But obviously now there's this bit of income which it doesn't have any tax. We haven't taxed it yet. And it says, well, anything that's above that amount. So anything that's above that amount, up to the amount that she actually earns, right? We're actually going to charge her 39% tax on that. Okay? And that is how you do tax, right? That's how you do it. It's this element of almost like piecewise, right? So what you do is you say, okay, she's going to pay this much plus 39% times how much her income is, minus how much she's already paid tax on, right? Because she's not going to be paying 39% on the whole amount. It's only 39% on the amount that she hasn't paid tax on. So be very careful there because students get very confused, right? So put this into your calculator. Make sure that you type it in correctly. I can't tell you how often I see students get this wrong just because they're not paying attention to what they're actually typing into their calculator. Okay, put that in and it says that's how much she's going to pay in tax. Now, obviously, you should be thinking, oh, okay, I'm not done yet. Okay, and also the mark allocation should indicate that to you. Because now what we have to do is we have to get rid of reduce the tax for some of the rebates, etc. So the rebates we're going to have medical aid. Okay, so we're going to say 210,573 minus the medical aid, which we've already calculated. That's handy. But then we also have to, medical aid, but then we also have to do her other rebates. Okay, and the other rebates that any person is qualifies for are these ones here, but depending on their age. So there's primary, everyone gets it. Secondary, only if you're 65 and older. And then tertiary, if you're 75 and older. How old is Jamie? 67. So she qualifies for both of these. Often students get confused here and they think, oh, she only qualifies for the secondary. How tax works is if you qualify for the secondary, you also qualify for the primary. If you qualify for the tertiary, you qualify for the secondary and the primary. So it's this element of they add all together. So over here, I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to say the 210573. Obviously, you don't have to write it out as lengthily as I am. I'm just being sort of over explicit. Minus the primary minus the secondary. Okay, so that's the primary and that's the secondary and this is the medical aid. Okay, so we've calculated medical aid, primary take off, secondary take off. Now we've accounted for all of our rebates and we're literally just going to put this into our calculator and then we are done, right? So this is how much tax she's going to pay in the year, okay? But for this amount, she needs to actually divide this by 12 because the question asked to please do it per month. So this is per year or per annum. And you obviously put a little round sign there, but they wanted it per month. So please go divide it by 12. And that is how much she will be paying per year. Right? And that's quite important because what students often forget is they forget that per year, they know the tax is per year, but then they forget to read the question where it says per month. Okay, so let's just quickly go through what we need to do in order to calculate tax. I'm just going to do it over here. Firstly, you have to calculate your annual tax. That's what we did when we times by 12. Then you have to calculate your tax deductions, okay, which is just your UIF, and your pension. If those aren't mentioned, don't include them. If it's just UIF, just do UIF, right? Depends what the question's saying. So you subtract those off and then you get your taxable income, okay? After you have your taxable income, you then work out your tax, right? You work out tax payable. Okay, I'm going to just put that there, tax payable, and that's dependent on the tax table. After that, then you have to subtract rebates. And there's two types of rebates. There is the medical aid, and there's sort of the primary, secondary, tertiary. Sometimes here you'll just have primary if they're young. Sometimes you have secondary, like we had here. And sometimes if they're quite elderly, like if they're 77, you'd have to subtract each of those off, right? Then after that, you would have your final tax payable. Okay, and that's what you pay for the year. If they ask per month, you divide it by 12. Otherwise, you are done. It's a pretty standard question, not difficult, very formula based. Make sure that you can do these questions because it's nice sort of marks in the bag. Okay, I hope that was helpful. I will post some more videos soon. Cheers.